Welcome back to another episode of the Find Food Freedom podcast. It's a really rainy day here, and honestly, it's actually perfect recording weather. I was going to say like the opposite, but I'm like, no, I'm all cozied up in my office. I have a nice cozy blankie on this big chair. It's like really dark in here, so the only light is my ring light, which is kind of bright in my face. Um, but I'm excited for today's episode because today's episode is part 2 of the previous episode. So let me just set the scene of what we're going through today. It's rapid fire. I learned very quickly that I'm not good at rapid fires from previous podcasts that I've been a guest on. But what I did is I put an Instagram question box up a few weeks ago, and I just asked people to share their biggest obstacles related to food, related to body image, related to movement. And we got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of responses of people saying, here's what I'm struggling with. And so, although I would love to be able to individually respond to every single message that came through, I don't have the capacity for that. And so I was trying to think of a way, like, how can we respond to all of these things, right? And all of these messages. And so that's where I was like, you know what? Let's do a rapid fire on the podcast, because typically every single podcast episode is a deep dive into a frequently asked question. And I think that is super beneficial because, as I always say, these podcast episodes are not substitute for professional counseling, right? Like, I don't know the people behind these questions. So these, take this information for exactly what it is, informational and educational purposes only. But I do like deep diving into questions because it's like, hey, this is as much info as I can give you without knowing who you are, your health history, or anything about you. And so with the rapid fire, it's kind of nice because when people ask questions on Instagram, it gives me the ability to respond as best I can. But I always love to put the disclaimer of nutrition is very nuanced, intuitive eating is very nuanced. I don't know the people asking these questions. I don't know their gender, their healthcare, their ability to get resources, their socioeconomic status, their likes, their dislikes, their preferences. Like, I don't know anything about people asking these questions. So I just do the best I can reading the question. First things to come to my mind, if I was in a counseling session and knew more about the person, here's where I would go. And so that's kind of how the rapid fires came to be. And I think they can be super helpful because the majority of people that sent in questions had really similar questions. Like, there was a lot of repeat questions. So we're just going to cover as much as we can. The goal is to give as many resources as possible. So that's what today's episode is going to be. It's going to be a rapid fire. And last episode, I got through one full screenshot. So I think that's like 8 questions that come through. So I'm going to do boom, boom, boom as quick as possible. But before we do that, we're going to start our episode with how we have started the episodes for a long time now, with a Find Food Freedom glimmer, if you will. So these are DMs that I get that if you go to my screenshots on my phone, I have a whole album of screenshots, and the majority of screenshots are from my Find Food Freedom Instagram. And anytime somebody DMs me, a testimony of how food freedom has changed their life or how intuitive eating has changed their life, I love to just screenshot that because, we all have hard days. And sometimes I'm, talking to computer screens and talking to phones. I really do miss the in-person connection. And the more that I can connect with you and feel like I get to know you and your story, it really means a ton to me. So I want to start by reading one of the most recent DMs I got. And again, I said this on the last episode when I screenshotted it, I didn't save your name. So I apologize because I definitely want to give a shout out to the people who are taking the time to share this information. So I apologize that I don't have your first name to share, but I thank you so much for this message. And I think it's an amazing message. All right. So it says, I've been following you and listening to your classes, etc., for a long time and working on intuitive eating. I have a long history of restricting, binging, and purging sometimes. I've been making great progress. And tonight I went to an Italian restaurant with my family and ate home baked bread and lasagna without guilt and listened to my body to stop when I was feeling comfortably full. Since I haven't been restricting, I felt no need to binge. I haven't ordered lasagna at a restaurant in years, even though I really love it. It was a great win for me. I just wanted to share with you and say thank you. So these are the messages that every single time I read a message like that, it like sends a surge through me, and it really sets my soul on fire and makes me realize, like, this is why we show up every single day, so people can experience life. Like, not only the food, don't get me wrong, having food freedom, you do exactly what that message says. You experience food without guilt and shame. But by doing that, when you do experience food without guilt and shame, it's a ripple effect, because then you get to be present in that moment and enjoy life. And so that's why on our page, you'll see it says find food freedom and enjoy life again, because most people didn't always have a really tough relationship with food and can remember some positive times. And so this person, for example, shared, like, they went to an Italian restaurant with their family. They got to enjoy the conversation, the stories, the atmosphere, right? Like, it's, of course, the food that's like the best part. But in addition to that, it has a ripple effect on your life. And that's something that through intuitive eating, there are so many studies on enhancing and increasing life satisfaction. And of course, we can't increase life satisfaction with dieting, because when we're following rules, when we're obsessed with food and how we look and the size of our body, that's all we hyper focus on. So how can we enjoy life? How can we be present, right? And enjoy all these things if that's what we're focused on? So I just thank you to this amazing anonymous person who sent this DM. I think so many people can relate to it. I think so many people can probably relate in a way too, where they're like, that's not me yet, but that's what I want, right? That's what I'm striving for. And I think that is a great reminder to anyone listening. All right. So rapid fire it is. I got it pulled up here. I got 8 questions, obstacles, struggles. So again, when I read these, I have no context of who the person is, and I'm going to respond with the best of my ability with the info that I have and just fire off the first things that come up for me. This is not professional counseling. This is not a substitute for working with a dietitian or an intuitive eating counselor, but hopefully it will give you ideas to get started with if you struggle with some of these same obstacles. All right. Without further ado, you know what? I need to take a sip of my iced coffee with cold foam. And for those of you who follow us on Instagram, I don't know if you're sick of the videos of me making my morning coffee or matcha, but I'm not stopping, because that is the joy to my day. Like, this coffee, first of all, it's also 10:15 a.m. right now. Like, I made this 3 hours ago and I'm still drinking it. I'm the slowest coffee drinker that's ever graced the presence. All right. I don't even know if grace the presence makes sense, but here we are. It's Friday. Okay. I struggle with not wanting to move my body every day and being okay with that. Ooh, this is such a good one. This is so relatable. Anybody that is working on their relationship with movement, or trying to make peace with movement, or trying to find joyful movement, again, this is so common. So I love to use the parallel of when you are trying to make peace with movement. It is the exact same process as trying to make peace with food. And what I mean by that is, when you are trying to make peace with food, you have to have unconditional permission to eat. And that's like a huge fear for people, because then they're like, I'm never going to stop eating. I'm going to be eating all the things. I'm going to eat pizza, cake, cookies, ice cream, donuts forever. And we know that's not true because with food habituation, the more exposure you have to the food, the less scary and fearful it is, and the more it becomes neutral. So the exact same thing has to happen when you're making peace with movement is you have to have unconditional permission to rest your body. And that again will trigger the thoughts of, well, if I let myself rest, I'm never going to move again. I'm never going to get back into working out if I don't move my body, if I take off time, right? Like I'm going to gain weight. I can't do this. Like there's no way. I have to move my body, right? It triggers all those fears. But in order to make peace with movement, we have to be okay with rest and understand that rest is just as productive as the movement. And so I just want to validate this is so normal to feel. And it's so important to sit in this discomfort and dig deeper and say, okay, why is this not okay for me? Like when I don't move my body, what is coming up? Like, what are the beliefs that I'm playing into? Is it that I'm lazy? I'm unproductive? I'm a bad person if I don't move my body? Whatever that thing is. And then you can see those beliefs, you can write them down, and then we can challenge them. Just like you were not born into this world hating your body and feeling like you don't deserve food. Those beliefs were taught to you somewhere. Same thing with movement. You were not born in this world thinking, I need to get 10,000 steps a day and I'm a bad person if I don't. That was taught to you somewhere. So just like you believe that, we can unlearn that belief. It's not a fact and dig deeper there. So that is my rapid fire. Again, I'm going more than 1 to 3 tips. I'm just letting it rip for each one. But that's where I would start when we were looking at our relationship with movement. All right. Next up, usually okay because I've been doing this work for years, but recently saw myself on a security camera and blah. I want to validate this. Body image work. What is it? I think social media can give us a very, very skewed version of what it means to have a neutral or even positive relationship with our body. You don't have to love your body every second, right? And so when we're working with clients and supporting them on a body image journey, it's not about waking up and looking in the mirror, or seeing yourself in a mirror, a camera, or whatever, and saying, I love myself. But it's about being able to see the body and not be obsessed with it, right? So first coming to this place of neutrality or acceptance. And that's where with someone, if I was working with a client that had a situation like this, we would unpack that together. Of course, we'd say, what about that situation? What about that moment made you feel blah? Because I think one thing so interesting, and I know I've experienced this on my body image journey, is how we can be having a great day, right? You have your pumpkin spice latte, you're at Home Goods, you're getting all your fall, autumn tchotchkes that you don't even need, but they make you happy. And how many 3 wet candles can we fit in the cart? And you're going, and then you pass a mirror or a security camera or whatever, and you see yourself and you just felt great. You were loving life, you were having a great time. But then you catch a picture, like a image of yourself, and instantly the mood changes, the vibe changes, nothing changed. Your body didn't change. Like your body was the same body that it was 5 minutes ago, but now we see it and it changes everything. And so that is a really important light bulb moment for people of recognizing your body never changed. It's your beliefs about body size. It's your beliefs about if I'm in this body, if my body looks this way, what does it say about me, right? And so the more we can recognize that, that's what the body image work is catching when these moments happen, not feeling guilt or shame if they happen. It is totally normal. Recognizing that doesn't mean you're moving backwards in your journey. It's actually progress and just having awareness of how you feel in your body, and then being able to recover from those quicker. So I also want to say a quick apology. There is some construction going on very close to my window outside. So if you hear crazy stuff going on, it's just a part of this ambiance today. It's just where we're at. All right. Next up, menopause belly with a sad face. That's all the context I was given. There was nothing else in this message. And so to that, I would first say, I want you to do me a favor, pull your phone out and follow at Menopause Nutritionist. This is Dr. Jen Huber. She's a colleague of mine. We've had her on the What the Actual Fork podcast. And you know what? I am going to really rapid fire this one and say no more, because Dr. Jen, her account is not only intuitive eating, weight neutral, anti-diet, but the entire account is dedicated to women going through menopause and supporting them through that. And I think that is huge, to not only have someone who has the professional experience, but also the lived experience. So we're going to go with that and say, please go onto Instagram and follow at menopause.nutritionist. Thank you, Dr. Jen. So this rapid fire obstacle question says, my blood shows I'm, in air quotes, pre-diabetic. Now I feel a bit self-conscious about my eating. Ooh, I want to validate this, that we could keep it pre-diabetic and talk about specifically blood sugar and hemoglobin A1C here, or we could take it more broad and say any lab value that is out of normal range can bring up and stir up emotions that can make it difficult on our intuitive eating journey. It's like another obstacle. It's another hurdle to think about. And what I would say to this is that medical nutrition therapy is a part of intuitive eating. I think one of the biggest myths I see about intuitive eating across the board is that intuitive eating is just eating all of the things all the time. That couldn't be further from the truth. Intuitive eating does give you permission to eat all foods, and once you have permission to eat all foods and truly believe that, which that can take years for some people, you get to start making decisions about what you want to eat based off of your hunger cues, your fullness cues, your satisfaction. And so when I read something like this, I love to tell people that how medical nutrition therapy, right? It's a part of intuitive eating. Gentle nutrition is the 10th principle of intuitive eating. I have a client I'm thinking about who had type 2 diabetes. He came to me, his hemoglobin A1C was over 9.0. He sat in my office, first sentence, opening his mouth, meeting me. You're just going to tell me to not eat carbs. I don't even know why I'm here. And I looked at him and I said, tell me more. I'm not going to tell you not to eat carbs. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And then we started to have this conversation. And over the weeks and months that unfolded, he came back in and he was like, what are you doing to me? I was like, I don't know. What am I doing to you? And he was like, I went out to eat with my friends and I always order a burger and fries and eat the whole thing. And I only had half the burger and a few fries and I was satisfied. He was like pretending to be angry with me. And he was like, I left the meal comfortably full. And again, like that anger, it was a funny banter we had. And I think that's what I want to bring to this conversation here is you are allowed to make decisions about what you eat based on medical nutrition therapy and related to blood levels and medical diseases and conditions. And you do not have to have guilt or shame being a part of that. And that's where intuitive eating dietitians, I think, differ than the traditional dietitians because, and I'm using totally myself as an example, Before I was an intuitive eating dietitian, I didn't have the verbiage or the capacity or the awareness to not bring guilt or shame into the conversation when working with someone that had diabetes or prediabetes, simply because you don't know what you don't know. And so, to go back to this rapid fire, you can better your health outcomes. You can better your lab values. You can work on eating in a way that supports you with different medical diseases and conditions. And you can do that without bringing guilt or shame into the situation. But I want to validate this comment that if it feels hard, if it feels scary, if you feel like getting diagnosed or getting a lab value back out of normal range started to spiral you, your feelings are valid. It's totally normal to experience this. And I would encourage you to get support from a professional who can not only guide you through the intuitive eating process, but has the clinical background as well to support whatever medical disease or condition that you are faced with. Oh, there's so much more I want to say, but it's rapid fire, baby. So I'm going to keep going. This like gets my heart rate up because I'm like, there's no one in the room. There's no clock going. Like there's no like punch clock, but I feel like maybe that would be fun. Maybe I should do like a buzzer where it's like, okay, I have a countdown and I have to buzz. We're just going to make this a game. Okay. Actually, I'm going to skip and read this one to go along with one because I kind of see it similar. This obstacle says trusting my body while trying to figure out medical issues that changes my needs. Actually, I'm going to say this is like exactly like what we just said, just worded a little differently. I just want to encourage anybody that is faced with a medical disease, condition, lab value, give yourself grace, allow yourself time to process and feel emotions that come up with the diagnosis, work with a professional to help you figure out what things need to shift and change that align with the goals that you also have for your relationship with food and body, because it can feel like a restriction. And the last thing we want to do is to trigger disordered behavior when trying to genuinely improve health, because now it just feels like a cycle again, right? A cycle that we're trying to break. So I'm going to use that one and just say, go back to the other answer. And that's what's so cool is like these were worded so differently, but they were very similar in what these two people were trying to achieve and to learn about. All right, here we go. Obstacle number 6, mental calorie counting and nutrition label checking. Okay, this is one we hear all the time, right? Is people come to us, the majority of people that we support at Find Food Freedom have dieted for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years. And so I call that a professional dieter. I want you to imagine that you've done anything for the amount of time that you've dieted. So let's say, I'm just going to use an example. Let's say you've dieted for 20 years. Okay. That is 20 years of experience in counting calories, reading labels, tracking sugar, tracking carbs, tracking portions, tracking macros. You name it, you've done it. If you've used MyFitnessPal, I was an avid MyFitnessPaler back in my diet culture days. You could probably tell me how many calories or grams of sugar or carbs or whatever your thing is that you were tracking, right? You could probably tell me more than I could the nutrition facts of certain things. And I think what's important to recognize is, let's call it what it is. When we've dieted for 20 years, we're a professional dieter. I want you to imagine having that much experience in anything else. Let's say it's Taekwondo. You have 20 years of experience in Taekwondo. Would you be good at it? Sure would. Would you be an expert? Probably. You'd probably be very advanced. And so if you've dieted for 20 years and you've been really, really, really good at following the rules and counting all the things, even when you're exposed to intuitive eating or walk an intuitive eating journey, you're not going to be able to just flip a switch and turn all of that off, right? Our brains are programmed a certain way. And so this person's saying, my big struggle is mental calorie counting, nutrition label checking. And they put like the emoji, the like, and it's, I want to validate, allow it to come up, and it comes up and then we let it pass, right? We don't judge ourselves. We don't guilt ourselves. Allow it to pass. Over time, the less attention you bring to it, the more it'll start to quiet down. But it is very normal to feel like, whoa, what am I doing without calorie counting? If you've been calorie counting for a really long time, and just finding yourself that you're doing it a lot. Okay. Ding, ding, ding. Next one. First time wearing a formal fitted dress to a formal wedding. Feeling nervous, like I'm going to be hyper fixated. Okay. So many things I want to do. One, go you. Stepping out of your comfort zone, purchasing a fitted dress. Amazing, right? Trying something new. Now, I have, again, like no context. I don't know who this person is. I can't have a conversation with them. I would love to ask some open-ended questions because I want to go back to if something doesn't fit comfortably. So something could be tight to the body, right? But it's still comfortable. But also, if something doesn't fit comfortably, that's where I would encourage a client, is there another dress? And I don't mean a different style. Like we could still get something tight to the body that fits comfortably. So first thing I would say is like, is it comfortable? Because if something's not comfortable, doesn't matter if it's the loosest, flowiest dress in the world, if it's itchy or if it's uncomfy, it's all you're going to think about all night. And of course, you're going to hyperfixate on that because you're not going to be able to think of anything else. And that's like if we have a pair of high heels on, let's say, that are 2 sizes too small, like no matter how much we want to enjoy the night, our feet are going to be in so much pain that we're not going to be able to think about anything else. So first I would look at that. And then secondly, if let's say, nope, it is comfortable, it's just the fact that it is tight, it shows the curves of your body and you feel nervous about that. I want to encourage you to focus on, what do you want to feel and experience that night at the wedding? Journal it. Is it spending quality time with your partner? Is it spending quality time with your family members and friends that are at the wedding? Is it going by yourself and meeting new people and putting yourself out there? Is it, dancing the night away? Whatever it is, write it down, write it down, write it down, write it down. Write what you want to feel, what you want to experience. That is going to be like, and if we could get that down to like 1 or 2 words, do a big journal page, we get it down to 1 or 2 words. That's what we're going to focus on when we get to the wedding. If we start to spiral with thoughts of our dress and how we're feeling in it, we're going to go back to, I'm just making up words, dancing and connection. Let's say those are the 2 words that you wanted to focus on. As soon as a negative thought comes in, we're going to allow it to come up. We're not going to judge ourselves. We're going to let it pass through. And then we're going to say those 2 words in our head or out loud. Feel free. People might think you're crazy, but that's fine. And just say dancing connection, right? If those were your 2 words. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to hit the dance floor. You're going to find a new person you want to connect with. You're going to find a family member, a friend you haven't seen in a while that you want to connect with. And you're going to go do what you want to feel and experience, because we're not going to let our body or these negative thoughts steal precious memories from us. And that's the perfect example of food and body freedom. Like when we make peace with these relationships, it allows us to be present and experience the things in life that we really want to experience. So that is where I would go with that one. All right. I don't have my buzzer, but we're moving on to the last one now. So this one says, the biggest obstacle right now is movement feels like a task, but then my body feels good afterwards. This is different than the other movement question that we had earlier. So this is going to be a little bit of a different answer. So movement feels like a task, but then but then my body feels good afterwards. So it might relate a little bit to the answer we had earlier in the sense of what is your intention behind movement? I want to really encourage you to bring it back to your intention. So that's one place I would look first. What is the intention behind movement? I also want you to continue to keep a list of what are forms of movement that bring you joy and that you experience those pleasant feelings and emotions after you complete it. So, for example, I'm going to just pretend, again, I have no context. Let's say it's a yoga class, and this person says, going to yoga feels like a task, but every single time I leave feeling less stressed, more flexible, more like loosey goosey. Like it feels pleasant in my body physically and emotionally. I still, multiple answers today. I feel like I talked about journaling. I think journaling could be um, a really strong thing to implement here as well, because then you can make those connections of when I do this, I feel this. And if, let's say, you go to 7 yoga classes over the course of however many months or years, and you can look back at the evidence that you've created of when I do this, I feel this. That can help overcome some of the fears if it's a mental hurdle. Now, I do want to put a disclaimer and make sure that we recognize that if we're noticing that we're pushing through and we're forcing ourselves to go to any sort of movement, in this example, we said yoga, but and saying like, I have to do this. I have to burn calories. I have to move my body, right? I have to do this because I want to shrink my body. That's going back to what we talked about earlier, is what is that intention behind movement? Because if your intention is not rooted in something that's going to bring you joy, chances are we're not going to feel pleasant afterwards. So if you start to notice that after movement, you're not feeling pleasant mentally, physically, right? Then we can start to make those connections. Now, there's so many other places I want to go with this because I have no context with this person. I'm going to cut that one there. But I have a feeling over the course of the next few episodes, we're going to get a lot more movement questions. So that is 8 out of 8. That is all of our rapid fire for this episode. I still have 3 more sets of 8, and I put up a Q&A box this morning of recording this and have hundreds more coming through. So I have a feeling that we're going to really have a lot to cover over the next few months here at Find Food Freedom. So if you found any of this rapid fire helpful and you found like, oh my gosh, when you said X, I felt like you were speaking directly to me, I want to encourage you to head on over to findfoodfreedomresources.com. Again, that's findfoodfreedomresources.com. And you will find an array of resources. You will find free masterclasses. You will find a very, very low cost monthly membership that has 2 group calls a month, a live masterclass every single month, 70 plus previous recorded masterclasses right at your fingertips, a private community. All of that in our membership is $27 a month, and you can cancel anytime, no cancellation fees, no questions. We created the membership because people were looking for an extremely low cost option for support. And that's where membership was born. We have individual coaching, group coaching, mastermind coaching, which is a hybrid of group and one-on-one. So the resources go on and on and on, but I want you to take what serves you and leave the rest behind. It's important to note that every single person that listens to this podcast is on a completely different part of their food freedom journey. You might be new, you might be advanced, you might have done this for one day, you might have done this for 30 years. So again, take what serves you, leave the rest behind. That's at findfoodfreedomresources.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed the rapid fire, if you have questions of things that you want to see, I want to encourage you to please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Let us know what you want to see more of. And you can always shoot us a DM as well. The DMs are always open. And remember, we share those Find Food Freedom glimmers at the beginning of every episode to really make sure we're centering the joy that comes out of food freedom. So I thank you so much for being here with me this week, and I will see you next week.